Okay, so Imogen just had a nightmare that Dr. Sullivan is Bloody Rose and that she was wearing a Davy mask. So I can't tell if my Dr. Sullivan theory is correct or if I'm about to be disproven in this episode. But let's figure it out together. So now the girls are in a classroom and they're having a full on scream moment where they're trying to suss out who Bloody Rose could be. They have the names on the chalkboard and they're going down the list. This is making me really like, I'm on the edge now. I'm like, is it really Dr. Sullivan or is Dr. Sullivan about to get it? Because they keep saying like it was a psychological attack. And if you saw my last theory, that's what I said exactly before this episode even came out, that this person knows Imogen's triggers and they were trying to trigger her into a psychotic break. And Tabby also said that the person who is Bloody Rose is skilled at making masks because they made the Bloody Rose mask and they made the Davy mask as well too. And we only know two people who are skilled at making masks, Wes and Christian. One of the people who commented on my video about Dr. Sullivan and Wes being her son said, "What happens if Christian is actually Dr. Sullivan's son?" I was like, oh my God, that could also be happening as well too. One theory that I didn't even think about that I'm glad the girls brought up, they were like, what happens if it's Miss Beasley and Kelly? I didn't even think about that because I didn't think that Miss Beasley was actually mad at these girls for what happened to Kelly, Karen, whichever twin it was. But that also could be a very strong possibility that it could be the dynamic duo that, like, I don't know if other people were assuming that too. Also, on a side note, it kind of scared me, like Imogen, how she was very able to call Dr. Sullivan up and put on that whole performance. Like, I love Imogen, but when it's moments like that, that scares me for like future seasons because I just feel like I don't know what she's capable of when pushed. Oh my God. I did not want to believe that Kelly could be involved. I wasn't even thinking her, but now I'm wondering, oh my God, I'm wondering if it is Kelly and her mom or Kelly is somehow involved in this. Because when Farron went to go confront Kelly, she was like, listen, there's somebody who is coming after us and they may come after you. And unfortunately, we think it's your mom. Kelly immediately dismissed Farron, which I understand because why would she want to assume that her mom is involved? But then when Farron brought up, okay, could Sandy be involved? And then Farron, no, and then Kelly goes, oh, Sandy is, and then she paused, and then she like, Sandy's at Cape May. Girl, were you about to slip up and say that Sandy's dead? And if so, how do you know that Sandy's dead? I just definitely don't trust Kelly, Karen, whoever this twin is, because that was so shady. She literally looked like she was about to like slip up and say some information. So Tabby asked his Christian about making a mask, and he said it's easy to make like a lifelike mask because you just need a 3D printer. So I'm like, okay, anybody could be involved. And as soon as she's asking him about that, he's like, oh, why are you curious? She's like, oh, I'm thinking about, certain ideas for the next movie I want to make. In comes Wes. So Wes is not dead. Wes is very much alive. And then he interrupts Tabby saying, oh, yeah, I've been thinking about ideas for my next movie as well, too. I swear, if my theory is correct about Dr. Sullivan and Wes, I'm just amazing. Wes then says that he's quitting this job because he feels like Millwood is a dead end and that he's moving to LA because one of his buddies is working on an A24 film. And he says he's hoping to finally make his movie. So I wonder what the subject matter is. It's weird because they're featuring Kelly a lot in this episode. So if she's not involved in this, I wonder if she's going to be tested. I mean, but that could also be a double bluff too, that she gets attacked. Oh God, we just have to keep watching. And all of a sudden, Coach Rhodes is back. You've been gone all summer. Where have you been, sir? So there's a lot of stuff that they're throwing at us, a lot of confusion. So what I found interesting was Tabby was about to go tell Christian about this Bloody Rose shenanigans that's been happening to the girls this whole summer. And I get it, you like him, girl, but you also found a Bloody Rose Waters mask in his house when you visited him episodes ago. So I just don't understand how she is not sus of him. But anyways, this Billy Crane guy, who's a film location scout, interrupts their conversation right before Tabby tells him about Bloody Rose. Billy says the director that he's working with wants him to, like, scout out the location, the movie theater to see if they want to film their horror movie here. And I'm like, who's this director? So Imogen just confronted Dr. Sullivan because she was like, what is your connection to what is going on with us and Rose Water and Bloody Rose. So Dr. Sullivan explains how she met Archie. She's like, let me tell you a story about a boogeyman. I don't know why that's your response, but okay. But what I found interesting was, so she's not secretly recording Imogen anymore because there's someone who's spying in on their session. Now, whether Dr. Sullivan knows or not, there's somebody who's spying. So she proceeds to tell Imogen how she met Archie, because she was working with her mother, and it was alarming to her that the mom was like, "Oh yeah, I have a son I have a child that I kept in a cage." So Dr. Sullivan says that she felt compelled to go to the house. She saw that he had broken free from the cage and that he looked feral. She got scared and she didn't call the police until several days later, which I found alarming as well too. She basically blames herself for this, and then she did mention her son, and she informs us that her son had been unalived. She believes it was Archie because she didn't do enough for him or his mother at the time. So Imogen is like, "How do you know that it was Archie?" And then Dr. Sullivan goes, "Mother's intuition." I just don't trust Dr. Sullivan. I don't know if she feels like, oh, Imogen wants to act, and like if she's so devastated and she wants to tug on my heartstrings, well, let me tug on her heartstrings. Like that's what made me feel like, are you trying to up the ante? Also, if she is involved in this, like I said, she's a mother who lost her child. She could still be hurt and scorned over that. Or does she feel like, do I make peace with Archie if I kill these girls too? Like, has Dr. Sullivan still been in contact with Archie this whole time? Like, obviously not like him having a conversation with her, but her visiting him saying, like, listen, I will give you these girls like on a silver platter, or I'll like finish the job. So that way you leave me alone and you stop like haunting me, because she said that she always felt like he was following her. So basically on Spooky Spaghetti, they said if Archie dies, then there's gonna have to be a blood atonement. Now we have to worry about this too. So there's an untitled horror movie that's about the Millwood Massacre. Whoever wrote the Ari Aster, Sydney Sweeney, and Emma Roberts line, I see you and I thank you. And Wes went to go to LA to go help his friend who's working with Ari Aster. Okay. Imogen looked up Sebastian to see if like Dr. Sullivan was telling the truth, and she found no trace of him. So we're gonna take this to part two because there's a lot more stuff that's happening. Hold on. I'm sorry, but Ash is definitely involved in this Bloody Rose Water shenanigans. How would the people on Spooky Spaghetti even know that Mouse was the one behind the Angela Waters post? Ash was there and helping Mouse as she filmed it. I mean, even though that seems so obvious because it's like, who else would know besides those two? Even though I don't even think she told the girls, how else would they know that it is Mouse? And I feel bad for her grandma because they're coming for her first. It's insane. Like I understood Mouse's intent where she was trying to disarm the Bloody Rose Waters killer squad because they want like a blood atonement if Archie passes away. But I'm just like, no, girl, like this backfired and it backfired hard. Why is Dr. Sullivan calling Imogen crying, all triggered, saying that story I told you about my son being murdered by Archie is real and I can prove it? Like, I get that Dr. Sullivan feels like maybe Imogen wouldn't believe her because she doesn't have any credibility after the girls found out she was secretly recording them and writing a book. But I'm like, Imogen never told you that she didn't believe you. She only told Johnny that she didn't believe you. I was a little shocked in this episode because I didn't think Mrs. Beasley still blamed the girls for Kelly slash Karen's death. Like, I know she said that Archie's the ultimate one who killed her, but she was like, no, these girls need to suffer and they haven't atoned for their sins. Yikes. So Dr. Sullivan is like, okay, Imogen, you're coming with me to the graveyard because I'm going to show you my son's tombstone. So I've been telling you the truth. But what was interesting was Dr. Sullivan goes, Sebastian's death drove me to do things, and then she stopped. Girl, what things? What are these things? Why do people keep pausing in this episode? Finish your sentence. And now Kelly has just locked her mother in like the praying room. This episode is throwing me for a loop because now she's believing Farron that her mom could possibly be part of this. It makes me wonder, like, is Kelly like a part of this and she's playing victim and she's like throwing suspicion on her mother? Like, this is so weird. Imogen returns back to Dr. Sullivan. She sees that she's gone, looks at her car, and there's nothing but roses that are there. What the hell's happening? Also, now Bloody Rose Waters paying a visit to Mouse's grandma in her house. Is she the one that called Mouse's grandma that day and told her grandma to drop Mouse off at that like Five Nights at Freddy like abandoned restaurant? So with Bloody Rose attacking Kelly at the pool, I'm sorry, but that to me seems so random, and I don't even understand how that would even happen. Like now, this is making me feel like it's not Mrs. Beasley. Like it feels planned and like well orchestrated, and this makes me feel like has Kelly been involved in this whole time? And it makes me wonder now too, because I know there's been a lot of people who've been speculating this. Did Karen or Kelly, whichever twin, not die and has been like working with the other twin this whole time? Because it just seemed to me too weird that like Bloody Rose would just show up at the pool, strike Kelly. We don't know if Kelly's dead or not. She probably isn't. And like be on her merry way. Like, are the evil like twins like back at it again? Like, please comment down your thoughts because this episode was really good and it confused the hell out of me.